Where is my clock? RC, this has been the weirdest. Welcome to the spin cycle. Andrew Southwick, RC Williams with you here today. This has been the weirdest start to this show ever. Uh,
Yeah.
we're a little bit late today. I, my computer did all kinds of weird things, and then when I rebooted it, it decided to update at that time too. So I know we're under the gun. RC, you got some time constraints to try to get right to everything. But bear with us. And not only that, but my awesome in-ears don't work anymore. They crapped out. They gave up,
Oh,
so to speak. So now I've got my over-ears on. It's a whole thing. And it's really hot, and I don't have air conditioning or a fan. I know, I'm starting by complaining. I probably shouldn't do that. But anyway, just letting you know, that's why it's a little bit weird, discombobulated today, because of course it is. Uh, anyway, I see we got later tonight, President Trump is going to address the nation. I haven't seen anything leak as to I haven't seen like the script leak or anything. I don't know. Have you heard anything about what he's talking about tonight? The only thing I've heard is people, some on the media, worried he's going to complain about election integrity and these kinds of things. It could be, but honestly, I have no idea what he's planning on saying. Do you have any insight?
yeah. The buzz, Andrew, is that he's going to talk about election integrity and some stuff that's breaking in Georgia. So we'll see what else comes with that. But that's been the prevailing thought, is that there's going to be more revelation. So,
And our plan here is we'll give you a reaction to that tomorrow. We'll have clips and sound and all that, and we'll respond to that there. But coming up to that, the last bit of news we got from President Trump specifically that didn't have anything to do with winning the war in Iran for the 53rd time. It was he released his financial statements. It got news for about 10 minutes, and then it went out of the cycle. But I was looking at this at his numbers, and I was thinking to myself, if I were a Democrat going into the 26 midterms, I would actually use these as I would run on this and nothing else, because the Democrats, first of all, are being taken over by communists, and they're welcoming that because it's just a pursuit of raw power, and whatever will get them there. So if they think communism will get them there, then that's fine. The Republicans are not doing a very good job at presenting a message of what actual non-crony, non-tech bro capitalism is, et cetera, et cetera. So if I'm the Democrats, I would use Trump's financials and run on them. And here's what I mean. I brought some visual aids.
hey.
Isn't that fun? I know. Spared no expense on today's special effects, John Hammond might say. So Trump's income, it's not a conventional audit, okay? And it's about 1,000 pages, all right? And effectively, he's got gross business revenue, he's got investment income, he's got sale proceeds, licensing payments, partnership distributions, and asset values. And a lot of these are at a really broad range, and I mean from like 700 billion all the way to almost to $2 billion. So huge ranges. And you can see here broken down. Now understand, when Trump took office in at the beginning of 2025, his net worth was 600 million. Okay, right now, on the high end, the estimate is a net worth at 2.6 billion, and you have to wonder where did that money come from. Now, I'm not begrudging anybody for making money. I'm not begrudging anybody in office for making money. This is not the point of that. But if I'm a Democrat, I'd be looking at this and I'd be saying, you know what? I think there's an argument to be made, particularly when it comes to Trump's crypto investments, that the whole canard of the rich get rich because they take it from the poor and the working class.
Mhm.
You can almost you can make that argument with these numbers. Let me show what I'm talking about here. Let me bring up a couple of things real quick. Branded products. So the Trump watches, he earned about $4.7 million off of those. All of his branded stuff, Save America, Letters to Trump, MAGA Journey. He made $208,000 in royalties off of the Bible.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
The God Bless the USA Bible. His resort empires, of course, you can see there the breakdown. About $500 million from clubs and resorts, and his revenue was up in West Palm about 27%. Bedminster. Now, this is all from the Office of Governance, so that you can find it there. You can see the citing on, or the source citing on the graphic itself. But let me bring you to this. Crypto was the biggest money engine, and particularly World Liberty Financial, which is what carried the Trump meme coin. And here's the issue with that. Nearly 800 million from that, and then out of token sales, 520 million. From ownership interest, 250 million. And then, of course, the Trump meme coin directly about 635 million, to a total of $1.4 billion plus. Now, and here's the thing, that ended up shorting because that was a stock that got dumped. All those who invested in the Trump meme coin, or the lion's share of them, lost their shirts in that. But Trump made more than $1 billion and increased his net worth to the tune of more than $2 billion, coming into office at 600 million. These are the numbers from the reports. This is what he released. So if I'm a Democrat, that to me, I'm running on that hook, line, and sinker. I forget the communist stuff, forget all that. If I want to make my argument stick, and here's the thing, my father-in-law, RC, was come on. Now I'm losing with them. Entrepreneur. There you go. He owned businesses, particularly in restaurants and things like that. And he would always say, you never got a job from a poor person. And okay, that's exactly right. People who aren't millionaires, billionaires, whatever, those are the ones who are employing and giving us jobs, so on and so forth. So if you have a president who is using the power of, now let me stop short, who is able to gin up a certain investment opportunity like a meme coin, my goodness, that almost writes the script for the Democrats to use in the midterms and to tie particularly hardcore mega Republicans to it. I'm wondering if this didn't open up kind of a Helm's Deep drain, open drain for the orcs to come in and storm the castle here in 26. RC, what's your take?
Andrew, this one's interesting, and we've actually been on this for a long time, even when Trump was between terms. I think we talked about his first term, and some of this, what we saw was largely unprecedented. Normally, a sitting president or someone coming into office completely decouples from their finances, right? For a very particular reason, because of the office that they're in. President Trump presented us a unique scenario where we had someone coming into office who was a frontline media personality, who was already wealthy, and could move markets by opening his mouth. Here's where it got weird in 2025. And I'm with you, Andrew. It's not about making money. We're entrepreneurs. We love money. We love the ability to have resources to be able to hire people and help their livelihood and build great businesses. So there's fundamentally nothing wrong with that, Andrew. And I don't particularly have a problem with that. Where I have an issue in particular is with the meme coin and the crypto stuff, because even if you are technically decoupled from it, when you're dealing with the markets, and President Trump has an affinity for talking about how good the stock market is, how good the financial markets are, and everything like that, every time he opens his mouth, he potentially moves the markets. So imagine now what's inferred with something like World Liberty Financial or something. Hey, Trump went to the Bitcoin conference and he had these conversations and he's talking about how good it is and what the kids are working on. And then Don Jr. and Eric are out there talking about it. And what names do these things have on them, right? So you get into a situation where the sitting president of the United States can move markets by opening his mouth, which inherently is going to happen anyway. But what we haven't had in the past is someone whose interests are so closely aligned to the movement of those markets. And that's what makes this thing stink, right? And right. The whole pump and dump side, I think we talked about this on Culture Crossroads, Andrew. I'm like, it's almost like clockwork. And I believe some of the young people who were working with the Trump team to get these meme coins out. So there was the Trump coin, then there was the Melania coin. And that came out like the day before Inauguration Day, is they basically knew that they could run a pump and dump, or on the crypto side, they call it a rug pull, where they get everybody in, they run up the price, they get out, and then all of a sudden the thing craters on itself, and your average person is left holding the bag. Now, people would say buyer or investor beware, and I get that, but it's a really, really, really bad look in a scenario like this, right? It was kind of like the Trump phone thing, and those have been or being delivered. But last year, there was this announcement about the Trump phone. It's going to be great. It's going to be an iPhone. It's going to be gold and everything like that. They're going to cost $600. Give us $100 deposit. So like $50+ million came in. Year goes by, it doesn't look like the phones are going to get delivered. So there's pressure, and then phones start getting delivered, and apparently they're Androids and they don't necessarily meet all the requirements. That is what it is. But what is interesting is you took deposits on this thing to the tune of $50 million that you were able to hold and monetize for over a year before producing a product. And so I think now we've grayed those things out, Andrew, and I think there's still a question as to whether President Trump has completely decoupled himself and everything is really in a blind trust. And that's a dangerous precedent for us because we've kept that firewall, whether it was a Democrat or a Republican, for forever, basically for good reason. And so now that we're in uncharted territory, the tribalism comes in. Like us having this conversation, I'm sure we're going to have our fair share of detractors that say we're just picking on him, when that's not what we do. We call balls and strikes, especially as a research business. Sherlock's reputation is based on that. But you have to understand that tribalism is exactly where they want you. So you can't look at these things objectively and say, wait a minute, that doesn't pass the smell test for me either. So, wow.
Well, and the argument that, what if Joe Biden were doing this, all Republican media, the Republicans themselves would be all over it. They'd be saying, hey, there's corruption, or they'd be at least asserting or alleging some kind of corruption or trying to get that to spin in the narrative. But because now it's our side doing it or the conservative side doing it, it's okay. And that double standard has come out, particularly under the cult of personality of President Trump. And again, like, not picking on it, but we have to look at that and say, well, my goodness, they were just bragging about, Trump defers his $400 million salary, and that's fine. He's increased his wealth almost $2 billion since being in office. And the lion's share of that was the crypto ventures, World Financial, and the Trump meme coin, which you can argue looked like a pump and dump stock scheme. I mean, so, I mean, RC, you've advised candidates before. If you're a Democrat going into the election, how would you characterize that?
Yeah, so I mean, I would take it and slice it up because it really is the gift that keeps on giving, right? I would just take one piece, and if I'm on that side of the aisle, I would simply say, listen, is this not an example of the rich getting richer and taking advantage of those who are less fortunate and who don't know any better? And how is it that the highest office in the land is where this stuff comes out of? Is this what you really want going forward? And then people would just simply tie whoever's running directly to the White House, and they would just make it work, right? And they just continue to pound on that. So if that's me, I would dig into that. And then if I wanted the tribal flaming, I would look at the God Bless the USA Bibles and say, look, they're trying to create a theocracy. And like, there are a couple of different roads you can go down. And it's unfortunate that you leave your flank open like this for something like that. But I think it's kind of a slam dunk if you want to rile up your base in races that are particularly tight, Andrew, in places where financial hardship exists. Done right, this is honestly the kind of issue that can turn a House seat. Because people become so frustrated and they just want the guy that they're going to send to hold somebody accountable to do something, because whether this is right or wrong, the perception of it is that it's bad. It is inferred that this isn't right and there is some advantage being played here. We've talked on Culture Crossroads, the Watchman Brief, and even when we teach in public about how fixed the financial markets are and how much inside information actually flows. And that plays out with Polymarket and Kalshi. You see that now, right? The reason that people are making so much money on is you have a bunch of insiders in DC who know what's coming, who create prop bets, or they get together and they do that, and then they take the money off the table, right? I mean, and when you've got your sitting Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, making $150 billion, shorting stuff around Iran, gets called in front of Congress and basically gets away with it, you're sending a message that makes a populist leftist Marxist communist message more palatable, because look at the gigantic punching bag you have to go after.
I want to bring up one other as I go through puberty here live on the air. I want to bring up one other piece of these settlements. He also earned, now not all of this is personal spendable income, because some of these proceeds went to like a future presidential library, some other purposes. Again, this must all be legal. I mean, right now, or there must be a loophole for it. Again, if this were Nancy Pelosi, the Republicans would be up in arms. But nonetheless, $80 million plus from media and tech settlements. That is suing ABC, CBS, other related settlements for the dreaded misinformation. RC, I also wonder too if that might set a dangerous precedent for those of us in media who depend on free speech and the protections thereof, and who depend on that to shield us from a government who doesn't want criticism. But now there could be a way, hey, the next president can go ahead and sue these smaller outlets because they were critical of the administration, and criticism, of course, is misinformation. At least that's what it is in political speak. And not only that, but they can make money doing that too. Does this present a potential free speech danger later on, or is this, hey, we're just in and out, you defame me, it's a clear liability case, whatever it might be? What's your take on this part of Trump's statements?
So, Andrew, this is the same short-sightedness that has gotten us into a bailiwick with executive orders versus codifying stuff into law. Executive orders change when administrations turn over. And so you set precedent. The concern here is what you just said, the precedent that's being set. Don't think that it won't be weaponized against smaller media outlets like ours in the future. And when people say, why are you doing that? They'll simply put back and say, well, the last administration basically set the precedent for us to be able to do this. So we're going to take it and enforce it. And here's the difference, Andrew. They will work very quickly to codify that into law so that it can't be changed, or it takes basically an act of Congress to change it. That's concern one. Concern two, Andrew, you brought up the settlements. Legal, I don't think legal's so much the issue. And did some of these people need to account for what they did? Did some of these media outlets need to account for what they did? Absolutely. So don't get me wrong on that, right? But I think when you do something like that, the question you have to ask yourself is about ethics. So just because something is legal does not mean that it is ethical. And if you set that standard, guess what? This is why we are where we are right now with Polymarket and Kalshi and some of these other groups, is that ethically the precedent has been set that these things are okay, that there's gray area, it's not illegal. And it doesn't matter if it's really immoral or unethical. It just matters that it's not illegal. Once you set that precedent and you open that door, that's when the worst of the worst comes in. And this goes back to something we discussed this week. If you're not willing to hold yourself to a higher standard, how can you expect people to hold themselves to a higher standard? I was listening to one of Kobe Bryant's speeches this morning when I was on the road, and he talked about that. The standard that you hold yourself to will equate to the standard that your teammates hold themselves to. If they see you leading, they're going to do the same. If they see you not, they're going to do the same.
Right. And, I do want to be clear too. We got a couple minutes left here, but the White House, the Trump organization do maintain that Trump doesn't manage these businesses personally, and that's probably accurate. How would he have time to? The assets are overseen by his kids, other financial managers, and that his administration's policies are undertaken in the public interest rather than to benefit his holdings. Not sure I totally buy the last sentence, but that is what they say. So I want to make sure that that's on the record as well. RC, as we go forward and look to the midterms, look to the strength of the Republican Party, how do you see Trump's brand helping or hurting Republicans? And depending on your answer, why or why not, and what can be done about it if it's negative or positive?
Yeah, Andrew, I think we're going to be in a mixed bag here. I mean, if I had to tell you today, as we look at July 16th.
Hold on, I'm sorry. I got to get this fly out of my face just a second. Okay, all right, go ahead. Sorry about that. That's live guerrilla television. That's what you get.
Right? Yeah. So I think that if I had to talk to you today, I mean, I think the Senate is safe. I guess as safe as it's going to get. But the House, I think you really run into an issue. I've seen some polling that it's plus 9D And I think over time that plays out. But anything right now, we're dealing with conflict in Iran, potential economic issues. Gas is up over $4 a gallon here in Florida again today. I think people's appetite for those things can turn. And the administration is one bad event away from the sentiment turning in such a way that people make their voices heard in November in a way that you wouldn't agree. So I think right now we're looking at a mixed bag. And in all honesty, the quality of the candidates for public service here, it makes it difficult, right? You're like, man, do I have to just hold my nose and take it again? Or am I sick? Am I sick of holding my nose because I actually want to breathe and I want the air to be clean? I think people get to a point where they just can't take it anymore and they say, you know what, enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And you got Trump's approval rating right now at 38%. That probably represents the high floor of the most enthusiastic of his base. The problem is it no longer represents that the independent coalition that got him reelected in 24 and into 25. So, you're probably right. It's a mixed bag. I don't know that it'll be as much of a blue wave as maybe we might have thought 3 months ago, but I can absolutely see the Republicans losing the House, possibly the Senate. Obviously, we're going to be following that week by week. But at any rate, wanted to make sure that we get this on the record now. That hey, if I'm a Democrat or if I'm a Republican going up against a Democrat, we better be ready for these kinds of attacks and how to come about them. All right, you can find our flagship show, Culture Crossroads, our main show that airs Sundays 5 p.m. Central Time, Beck TV Plus, BEKTV.plus, and on demand also on the Epic Cable on the Watchmen Action Network. And you can also find R.C. Williams, Juliana Ramon, she was with us yesterday, there as well. And of course, our YouTube pages at Culture Crossroads 316 and at Watchmen Action. Find us there. We're all over social media, different places. And wherever you are watching, we do encourage you to subscribe to the channel. Let the algorithms know that you want this kind of content, not the nonsense they're going to give you. So, RC, you got to get out of there. So we got to get out of here too. We'll be back tomorrow. Are we looking at 12:45?
Yes, sir.
12:45 tomorrow, friends. Spin Cycle will be back. We'll see you then.